phone. It's happening this Wednesday, tomorrow, 2:20 p.m. No reason to panic. It leads us, though, to tonight's good question. What's this alarm for? Why exactly is this happening? Well, the federal government said it will conduct a nationwide test of its emergency alert system and also the wireless emergency alerts. The EAS portion of the test will send an emergency alert to all radios and televisions, while the WEA portion of the test will direct alerts to all cell phones. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, released a statement saying, quote, "The purpose of the October 4th test is to ensure that the systems continue to be effective means of warning the public about emergencies, particularly those on a national level." So how does this impact you? Again, starting 2:20 p.m. tomorrow, all wireless phones should receive an alert and an accompanying text message that reads, "This is a test of the National Wireless Emergency Alert System. No action is needed." The test will be broadcast by cell towers for around 30 minutes. Wednesday's test is set to be the 7th ever nationwide for the emergency alert system. It's the 3rd nationwide test of the wireless emergency alerts. The most recent test run took place back in 2021. The first ever test of the emergency alert system occurred more than a decade ago, back in 2011. Now, there have been some high-profile mistakes attributed to errors at the state level associated with mobile emergency alert systems that hit cell phones. Back in January 2018, a Hawaii State emergency management worker accidentally pushed the wrong button in the Emergency Operations Center, sending out a false warning alerting of an incoming ballistic missile threat. Sent panic right across the island. The employee who pushed the wrong button was ultimately fired.